Hey guys, Tbull here. Today we're got a game in the California for you. We're going to be talking American Battleship strategy. There's Sims, we got Cunningham, we got Scharnhorst. That's double accuracy build. A lot of you guys don't have the Scharnhorst character there. If you don't have that one, Kedrov's always a good pick for battleships. You can put Cunningham on Kedrov on pretty much every battleship build in the game, and nobody's going to bat an eye on you. That's perfectly fine. But I want to talk about a couple main concerns or issues that people tend to have with these American battleships, and I'm going to be talking about the tier 3 through 6 in general because they play very similarly. Pretty well armored, especially if you're angling properly. Very slow, and you know that the very slow is kind of the key to these ships. You need to be focusing on your position. But the first mistake, it's a new player mistake. It's just shooting HE all the time. I think a lot of new players gravitate towards the American battleships, and you'll see them shooting salvo after salvo of HE. That's generally a mistake. I mean, I'd probably shoot 1 out of 100 salvos in this thing with HE. Just in cases where, you know, we're expecting to be under prolonged destroyer attack, and we really don't have any other targets that are going to be viable to shoot at. Because if you shoot a destroyer and you're hitting them with AP, that's usually about 1,000 damage per shell, and if you got a 10k destroyer, in terms of health, for instance, that's a lot of damage. You know, it's 10% per hit. So don't worry about the HE unless you know you're not going to have any other targets. But you know, that Queen Elizabeth, for instance, is pointing at us. That's what we refer to as angled in this game, and that can be hard to damage reliably with the AP. You want to be aiming up, trying to hit them in the superstructure whenever that's the case, so you can still do plenty of damage with the AP. But let's say the Queen Elizabeth or a battleship that we're having trouble damaging with the AP, if they're demonstrating over the course of 2-3 salvos, okay, they're playing it really tight, they're angling, they're defending themselves, then maybe we'd switch to HE in that circumstance. So, unless you're sure that the HE is going to be the better option, and usually it isn't, then just stick with the AP. The main problem, though, that most players are going to encounter with these ships is just positioning, and it boils down to the fact that they're so slow. If this thing's going 17 knots or whatever the top speed is, and I get out of position, I can't do anything. I got no enemies within my range. By the time I turn around and get back into the battle, it could be half the battle gone. We could effectively be out of the game for huge chunks of the match, 33%, half the game, whatever it is. And that's a disaster for your team. This game is a numbers game. Usually the team that has the numerical advantage should be winning, unless they're not playing it properly. But, by getting yourself out of position, you can kind of take yourself out of the game artificially. So here we spawn in the middle of the map. Here we got a game on straight. And in general, I'm going to be playing the middle of the map here until there's nothing left for me to do. All right, if we wipe out everything in the middle, we don't have any crossfire shots across the map and anything, then we need to evaluate the situation and start moving there. But until that situation happens, we're not parking it. We're just not dropping the anchor here. We want to be staying moving, especially if we got a lot of destroyers running around, and we might be potentially under a torpedo strike. If you're dead in the water, especially with these things that aren't going to be, they're not, considered very fast ships by anyone, that can cause problems too. So, staying moving like we're trying to do here, but still kind of holding down the territory that we're responsible for, that's kind of the name of the game. If you're on the flank, that's when you can really have problems. Now, if you spawn on one side or the other, on the left side of the map, the right side of the map, you're responsible for that area. Okay, you need to clear that side out. You need to slow them down. Whatever the play dictates, it's not bug out and leave just because you don't feel like playing over there. That's your job. You're spawning there. But let's say, we spawn over here on this Fuso side. I want to be kind of pointing towards the middle of the map and maybe gradually sailing over towards the center, so that when I'm done fighting these guys over here, then I would be already kind of getting more relevant in terms of my positioning, rather than sailing towards the edge of the map. Then we win the fight, then we have to turn around and go back into the middle of the map, and that could take, again, 5 minutes, a third of the game. So got to keep an eye on those two things here. This game, look at our team, they're really clumped up. We got a super gravitational object located just below the cap on the blue side. Red team doing a pretty good job. In fact, they're up ships at the moment here. They got 2 losses, we got 3 losses, and they're kind of surrounding us. Now we got 2 destroyers playing aggressively in the middle. That's fine as long as they're not getting too close, those guys. If they get spotted in that really advanced position, and a lot of our ships are more backline like we are here, well, then they are not going to have the support they need. They can get taken out of the game very quickly, and that, basically is throw behavior. It's very hard to win the game when your destroyers are all killing themselves, but everyone else is kind of clumping around here. Now, it's not necessarily that bad. I mean, what's happening here on this map straight is they have to go through these channels, right? So these ships are coming out one by one. They're not really surrounding us effectively. What the main problem you're going to have when you're in these black hole situations where everyone's sucked into a singular point in time and space is when the enemy surrounds you and then they're hitting you from all the angles, because then you can't defend yourself by armor angling. Icarus trying to open water gunboat us here. If you see a battleship that has 50,000 health and you think to yourself, I'm just going to sail around in the clear blue seas trying to gun them down as a destroyer, as long as they are willing to shoot back at you, you're going to lose that fight, okay? The only time that you're still not going to kill them, it would take probably the entirety of the game for that guy to be shooting me to kill me, but assuming I never shot back at him, assuming nobody else on my team shot back at him, that's the only way that you have even a chance in hell to survive that. If you got someone like me who's going to shoot back at you, not the way to go about it. So we're trying to take that kill. We're still down a ship here, though. We got 4 ships left. They got 5 ships left. We're just over a third of the match, a third of the way through the match here. This one's actually going to go to the buzzer. So we're going to see some action here. Fuso's poking around, but getting back to my point, these guys, even though they have good map control in terms of horizontal control, really right now we have 2 battleships that can engage us. Perhaps that, I believe it's a Nuremberg, that cruiser on the left-hand side of the screen there. Perhaps he's got a shot at someone, perhaps not. Looks like the guy directly to the south of our position. Maybe he can shoot at us. But these guys aren't pressing forward together. If the whole team surrounds us, then we can't defend ourselves by angling. We're going to be taking citadel shots left and right, and that's when the team evaporates. So, I don't advocate clumping up. Usually I wouldn't recommend that as a strategy, even though it's the most common strategy in the entire game. But in certain situations like this, where the enemy, just how they're pushing in, and it's kind of a one-by-one manner, then we can get away with it. Because we're, at that point in time, we got 3 ships shooting the one that's coming through the gap, then we still got 3 ships shooting the next guy that's coming through the gap. And that's also applicable for late game situations. You see that a lot, especially teams that are up. They're up on score, they're up on ships, but they're kind of spread out, perhaps, and they're engaging the remaining enemy ships. Let's say the enemy's got 3 ships left, and we got 5 ships left, but if we're going into them one at a time, they kill the front ship. That's effectively a 3-on-1. It's not a 5v3 in that case. It's a 3-on-1. So you got to keep an eye on that. They're still up here now. They've eliminated that southward ship, and we got all 3 ships here. Now we got a low health Leon. I got pretty good health here, but note we're spotted here. Now, quick check of the map. We don't see anything. The cruiser is the only one that potentially would be able to spot us without us spotting him back, but he's, of course, blocked by that giant island. And so we can assume it's the destroyer in the vicinity. Now, I don't know if we checked the scoreboard or not, but watching this back, yeah, there it is right there. We can see the Mayhan as the destroyer. Now, if you're familiar with the low-tier American destroyers, they don't have great torpedo range, so they can hit you from a stealth position if you're sailing into them. Otherwise, they're probably going to be revealed. Aoba coming around here. Fortunately for him, he's broadside. We're going to give him a nice whack. Don't take him out with the one salvo like we're hoping. But getting back to my destroyer point, he's not likely to be able to stealth torpedo us, at least with ease. So as long as we're changing our direction, and this is good battleship tactics, doesn't really matter which battleship you're in, changing the heading every few seconds, changing the speed, making sure that, we're not setting ourselves up for some sort of stealth strike. That's how you survive in these things. Aoba Beach is there. I don't think he realized he was heading into the water. We aimed for the back part of that ship because he's likely to slam it in reverse, try and get out of there. Whacked him pretty hard there. Got him for a citadel and a couple overpens. And I think our teammates are going to go ahead and finish him off with ease. So that's going to, whenever he goes down, we're going to be back to even finally after being down the entirety of the game. There we got some torps. Possible, probable even from the Aoba. We got some widespreads potentially. but we don't know for a fact. I mean, we saw 3 torps. I don't frankly know what the Aoba's torpedo setup is. Maybe it's 3 per launch. Who knows? We actually got hit with one there. But again, we got to account for the fact that the destroyers in the air, we still remain spotted. You see, we've been spotted for a long time. Theoretically, it could have been the Aoba spotting us, but now that he's dead, now that Nuremberg's blocked by the line of sight there by the island, and we got the Fuso trying to lob shots over that island, the Fuso can get away with that as long as this destroyer is spotting, and that's kind of the main advantage. One of the main advantages of having destroyers alive late in the game. Number one, it's very easy for them to go cap to cap and win the game domination mode by controlling the cap game, but also the spotting here. And this is what we're always constantly talking about, destroyer spotting. He doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to launch his torps. He doesn't have to fire his guns for the remainder of the match. As long as we don't find him, and I frankly have no idea where he is, that Fuso can keep lobbing shots at us. And there goes our support Leon. We're tied up again. We're up 15 or so points. Looks like 14 points. And that's going to be key. We're going to be keeping an eye on the score late in the game here. But once again, spotted. So if we drop spot like that briefly, that tells us one thing. One of 2 things. Either he briefly left our detection ring on the map, rather unlikely in this scenario just because of, he'd have to be playing quite a ways away from us, or he briefly went behind an island and came around. So we got several small islands over here that would likely occur if indeed that was the case. So we're reading the situation, keeping an eye on the fact that we're spotted, and again, we're just changing course here. We got a low health Fuso over there. Not really in great danger of killing us outright because, again, we can angle against him. Yeah, I got a 4,000 damage salvo right there, but as long as we're not broadside, he's not going to get any devastating strikes. But making sure we don't take this torp, that's the key here, because that cruiser, he can get one shot by that battleship, potentially gets hit by the torps or whatever. I don't know the player's skill level. I've never, you can't assume anything when you're playing with randoms. You just have to basically assume. It's safer to assume your teammates are going to die when you're trying to evaluate what we do. Mayhan pops up here, unfortunately for him. Now, I don't know if he got too close to cruiser or me. He's trying to immediately smoke up. I'm pinging him, trying to get some shots on the cruiser for him, and then we're trying to swing the guns. And say he's trying to torp us here. Well, we immediately change the direction, and most players aren't going to account for a change in direction like that. So if you think that it's possible they torped, immediately change the direction. We also want to turn away from him. I don't know the Mayhan's torp range. I'm guessing it's about 5.5. But I don't play that particular ship that often, so I don't know off the top of my head. But if we can, number one, change the direction, and there's some torps. Now, were those for me? Probably not. Looks like he's trying to torp the cruiser. But if they launch for us and we immediately change the direction when he becomes spotted like that, we're probably going to dodge. And then, boom, down he goes there. And if we pull away from him, short-range torps, we're sailing away from him. In general, we're likely to get out of the range of the torpedoes. So those are several things you can do. I know a lot of players, especially the battleship players, have trouble with the destroyers. They get frustrated, but you need to understand what the situation in the game is. You need to be reading, okay, I'm spotted. You need to look at the map saying who's spotting me, deduce what's going on. If you see a grayed out destroyer from the enemy team that was previously spotted, look where he's pointing. A lot of players aren't going to be changing their direction that radically. See what side of the map they're on. You got to be reading the situation like that and then respond. As soon as he does pop up, if he makes a mistake, then just take evasive maneuvers and do whatever you have. And speaking of game awareness, now I'm going to be pinging this guy quite vigorously. And I'm basically misreading the play. I think it's an 85-point swing for a cruiser. I think you either gain or lose 50 points for killing it, and you get an extra 35-point loss. Let's say if your team kills a destroyer. So if you lose a battleship on your team, that's a 100-point swing, 85 for cruisers. So actually, even if this guy dies, we already got the game wrapped up as long as we both don't die. But I didn't do the math very properly. In fact, I had to double check exactly what the swing was for cruisers before I record this video. But he's going to try and rush the battleship and go for extra damage. I wasn't 100% sure, what sort of impact on the score it would have if he died. But he's a one shot for that guy, and you need to understand, if you don't know, if the game's close enough where if you die, when you lose, then this play is, boneheaded. All right, so maybe he knows the score system better than I do, and he's like, it doesn't matter, Chief, don't worry about it. Let me get my extra 200 damage or whatever he's going to get. But, due to that fact that we're not actually going to have more than 85 points change hands there, the game's effectively over. So, anyway, in this particular match, we spawned in the middle, and we really never left maybe a 2x2 grid area on the map, but we were always moving the whole game. So, hopefully that gives you some tips for the American battleships, especially the lower tier ones. If you did enjoy that video, please hit the thumbs up. New to the channel, consider subscribing. Questions, comments, leave them below. Love to hear from you guys, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.